Montana Territory, 1882. The wind howled like a wounded wolf across the rugged landscape, where purple mountains stood sentinel over vast grasslands that stretched toward infinity. The frontier was no place for the weak, and Samuel Blackett had long ago decided it was no place for love either. The 26-year-old cowboy had built his life around that conviction, as solid as the Rocky Mountains themselves. The setting sun cast long shadows across the Rockingbee Ranch as Sam dismounted from his chestnut gelding. His lean frame moved with the easy grace of a man who'd spent most of his life in the saddle. A light stubble darkened his tanned jaw, and beneath the brim of his worn Stetson, keen blue eyes surveyed the ranch he'd built from nothing but grit and determination. "Another day, another dollar," he murmured to his horse as he led it toward the stable. The animal nickered softly in response, perhaps the only creature on earth Sam truly trusted. People let you down, animals never did. That was the simple truth he'd learned during his years on the frontier. Sam had arrived in Montana at 19, fleeing memories of the war that had taken his father and brother, leaving nothing behind in Virginia but a burned-out homestead and a mother dead from grief. The West had offered something simple: survive or die. There was clarity in that choice that Sam appreciated. No room for complications like love or family, just the daily battle against nature, outlaws, and one's own weaknesses. The ranch hands were gathering for supper as Sam entered the main house. He nodded at the men, good workers, all of them, but not friends, never friends. Sam kept his distance, maintaining the careful boundary between employer and employee that preserved his solitude. "Boss," his foreman Mike Dooley approached with an envelope. "Telegram came for you from Clearwater. Sounds like your cattle buyer's coming early." Sam took the paper, scanning the brief message with a frown. "Hamilton's arriving tomorrow instead of next week. Says he's bringing his niece who's looking to settle out west." He stuffed the telegram in his pocket. "Just what I need, playing tour guide to some Eastern belle who'll run screaming back to civilization the moment she sees what frontier life is really like." "Might be nice to have a lady around," Mike suggested with a knowing grin. Sam shot him a look that silenced further comment. "The only thing nice will be the price Hamilton pays for our cattle. The woman's just excess baggage." Later that night, as the bunkhouse fell silent with the sleeping breaths of tired men, Sam sat alone on his porch, a glass of whiskey in hand. The vast Montana sky sprawled above him, stars scattered like diamond dust across the black expanse. It was moments like these, when the world grew quiet and vast, that the emptiness inside him echoed loudest. Sometimes, in the deepest hours of night, Sam wondered if his belief that love had no place on the frontier was just a shield against his own fear. But by morning, he'd always convinced himself anew. Attachment was weakness, and weakness got you killed out west. Better to be alone than to lose everything again. The next day dawned crisp and clear as Sam rode into Clearwater, the nearest town to his ranch. The stagecoach was already pulling in as he hitched his horse outside the hotel, right on schedule despite the rutted roads and mountain passes it had to navigate. Hamilton descended first, a portly man in an expensive suit that immediately collected a layer of Montana dust. Sam stepped forward to greet his business associate, but his words died in his throat as the second passenger emerged. She stepped down from the coach with surprising grace, refusing the driver's offered hand. Tall and striking, she was nothing like the fragile Eastern flower Sam had imagined. Her deep auburn hair was swept up beneath a practical hat, and her traveling dress, though clearly of fine quality, was sensibly cut for frontier travel. But it was her eyes that caught him, warm brown with flecks of gold, observant and direct as they met his. "Mr. Blackett, I presume," her voice carried across the distance between them, confident and melodic. "I am Olivia Brennan, Mr. Hamilton's niece. Thank you for accommodating our early arrival." Sam found himself momentarily speechless, an unfamiliar sensation for a man who prided himself on never being caught off guard. She approached with her hand extended, not in the delicate manner of a society woman expecting a gentleman's kiss, but offered firmly for a handshake. Instinctively, he took it, noting the surprising strength in her grip. "Miss Brennan," he managed, tipping his hat, "welcome to Clearwater." "Ah, Blackett," Hamilton bustled over, clapping Sam on the shoulder. "Good to see you, my boy. I see you've met my niece. Olivia's 21 and tired of Boston society. Wants to see what opportunities the frontier might hold for an independent woman." "Independent woman," Sam couldn't keep the skepticism from his voice as he glanced at Olivia Brennan's fine leather boots, already gathering Montana dust. She met his gaze steadily, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "You doubt such a creature exists, Mr. Blackett." "I've found the frontier tends to have strong opinions about what people can and cannot be, Miss Brennan," Sam replied carefully. "It doesn't much care for notions brought from back east." "Then we're well matched," she replied smoothly, "as I've never much cared for notions about what I should or should not be, regardless of their origin." Hamilton chuckled nervously, clearly sensing the tension. "Olivia's late father, my brother, left her quite comfortable, but she's determined to make her own way. She's considering purchasing land here for a small horse breeding operation." Sam raised an eyebrow. "Horse breeding requires experience, Miss Brennan." "4 years working with my father's stables," she replied without hesitation. "I've delivered more foals than most men twice my age and broken horses that experienced trainers declared unrideable." Her uncle beamed with pride. "Olivia has quite the way with horses, natural talent." "Nature is one thing," Sam said. "Surviving Montana winters is another. This isn't Boston, Miss Brennan." "How fortunate, then," she replied with that same measured smile, "that I didn't particularly care for Boston. Now shall we discuss business? I understand you have some fine cattle to sell my uncle." The meeting at the hotel proceeded with surprising efficiency. Hamilton knew livestock and prices, and the deal was struck quickly. Throughout their discussion, Sam found his attention repeatedly drawn to Olivia, who followed the conversation with evident understanding, occasionally asking pointed questions that revealed she was far from being merely decorative. "Mr. Blackett has invited us to visit his ranch tomorrow," Hamilton announced as they concluded their business. "You'll get to see a real working Montana operation, my dear." "I look forward to it," Olivia said, her gaze meeting Sam's with a challenge he couldn't quite decipher. "Perhaps Mr. Blackett might show me some of the available land in the area while we're there." Sam found himself agreeing before he could formulate a reason to refuse. There was something about Olivia Brennan that threw him off balance, a quality he couldn't name, but that disturbed his carefully constructed solitude like a stone dropped in still water. That night, as he rode back to his ranch under a sky blooming with stars, Sam told himself his interest was merely curiosity. The woman was an anomaly, a wealthy Easterner with aspirations that seemed destined for disappointment once she encountered the true harshness of frontier life. Nothing more. Yet as he prepared for their visit the next day, he found himself instructing the ranch hands to clean up the place more thoroughly than usual, and even put on a fresh shirt, actions that prompted knowing looks from Mike Dooley that Sam studiously ignored. When Hamilton and Olivia arrived the following morning, she was dressed for riding in a split skirt of practical brown wool, her auburn hair braided and pinned beneath a wide-brimmed hat. Sam noticed she rode astride rather than side-saddle, handling her mount with confident ease. "Your ranch is impressive, Mr. Blackett," she commented as he showed them around the main house and outbuildings. "How long have you been established here?" 7 years, Sam replied, unable to keep a note of pride from his voice. "Started with nothing but a claim and 20 head of cattle. Now we run over 500. "All on your own?" There was genuine curiosity in her question. "The frontier doesn't reward those who wait for help, Miss Brennan." She studied him for a moment. "No, I don't imagine it does. But neither does it punish those who recognize the value of partnership, I would think." Before Sam could formulate a response, Hamilton interrupted to ask about the cattle they'd be driving to market. Soon they were riding out to view the herd, the business purpose of their visit taking precedence. It was on their way back that disaster nearly struck. They were crossing a stream when Olivia's horse suddenly reared, spooked by a rattlesnake. The animal lost its footing on the slick rocks, tumbling backward. Sam watched in horror as Olivia was thrown into the rushing water. Without hesitation, he spurred his horse forward, dismounting in one fluid motion as he reached the bank where Olivia was struggling against the current. The stream wasn't deep, but the recent rains had made it swift, and she was being pulled toward a section where it narrowed dangerously between rocks. Sam waded in the cold water, soaking him to his thighs as he reached for her. "Take my hand," he called out, stretching toward her. Olivia fought her way toward him, her face determined despite the danger. Their fingers touched, slipped, then connected firmly. With a powerful pull, Sam drew her toward him, but as she reached the bank, the muddy edge gave way beneath his boots. For one precarious moment, they both teetered on the brink of being swept away. Instinctively, Sam wrapped his arms around her waist, trying to lift her to safety, but the combination of her water-soaked clothes and the unstable footing made it a struggle. "You're too heavy for me," the cowboy laughed, the sound tight with effort and a hint of panic as he fought to keep them both from falling back into the rushing water. In response, Olivia didn't wait to be rescued. Instead, she found a foothold on a submerged rock and pushed upward with surprising strength, her hands gripping Sam's shoulders as she essentially helped lift herself. Together, they tumbled onto the bank, safe but thoroughly soaked. For a moment they lay side by side, catching their breath. Then Sam turned to look at her, water dripping from his hat brim, and found her already watching him, a gleam in her eye that wasn't entirely from exertion. "Too heavy," she repeated, raising an eyebrow. Despite himself, Sam felt a genuine smile crack through his usual reserve. "Seems I underestimated you, Miss Brennan." "A common mistake," she replied, sitting up and wringing water from her braid. "One I've grown accustomed to correcting." Hamilton galloped up, frantic with worry, but Olivia assured him she was unharmed. Sam offered his dry coat, which she accepted with simple gratitude rather than flustered feminine helplessness. As they made their way back to the ranch house, Sam found himself revising his assessment of Olivia Brennan. She was still an Easterner, still likely unprepared for frontier life, but perhaps not quite as fragile as he'd assumed. Back at the ranch, while Olivia changed into dry clothes borrowed from Sam's limited wardrobe, he found himself recounting the incident to Mike with unusual animation. "Never seen a woman handle herself like that in a crisis," Sam admitted. "Most would have been screaming for rescue or fainted dead away once they were safe." Mike gave him a knowing look. "Miss Brennan seems different." "She's still an Easterner," Sam said quickly, as if reminding himself. "Still has no business trying to establish herself out here alone." "Maybe," Mike allowed. "Or maybe she's exactly where she belongs." The thought unsettled Sam more than he cared to admit. Over the following week, as Hamilton conducted his business in Clearwater, Olivia continued to visit the ranch. Despite Sam's initial reluctance, he found himself showing her the available properties nearby. Her questions were practical, her observations astute, and her determination unwavering despite his repeated warnings about the challenges she would face. "Winter here can kill the unprepared," he told her as they rode along a ridge overlooking a promising valley. "Temperatures drop to 30 below. Snow can isolate you for weeks. Men twice your size have frozen to death just trying to reach their outbuildings in blizzards." "Then I shall build my outbuildings closer and stock sufficient supplies," she replied simply. "I'm not unfamiliar with winter, Mr. Blackett. Boston has its share of nor'easters." "This isn't." "Boston," she finished for him, a smile touching her lips. "Yes, you've mentioned that, repeatedly. Tell me, do you discourage all potential neighbors so thoroughly, or am I receiving special attention?" The question caught him off guard. "I'm merely being honest about the realities." "Are you," she challenged gently, "or are you defending something else? This solitude you've wrapped around yourself, perhaps." Sam felt as if she'd seen straight through him, and the sensation was deeply uncomfortable. "You don't know anything about me, Miss Brennan." "I know you built something impressive here alone," she said. "I know you keep everyone at a careful distance, and I know there's sadness behind your eyes when you think no one is watching." Her voice softened. "What I don't know is why you're so determined that others can't build something here too." Sam turned away, ostensibly to survey the land below them. "The frontier breaks more people than it makes, Miss Brennan. I've seen it happen. Men arrive full of dreams and leave in pine boxes. Women come as brides and end up widows before the year is out. Children," he stopped, the word catching in his throat. "And yet people keep coming," she observed quietly. "Because despite the hardships, there's something here worth the struggle, freedom, possibility. A chance to define oneself beyond the constraints of society's expectations." She guided her horse alongside his. "Isn't that why you came?" He looked at her then, really looked at her. The sun caught the red-gold highlights in her auburn hair, and her eyes held a depth of understanding that belied her years. For a brief moment, Sam allowed himself to imagine what it might be like to have someone like Olivia Brennan as a neighbor, or something more. The thought startled him so much that he abruptly turned his horse. "We should head back, storm's coming." The storm arrived sooner than expected, catching them halfway back to the ranch. Rain poured from the sky in blinding sheets, turning the trail treacherous. Thunder crashed overhead as lightning split the darkened sky. "There's a line shack just over that rise," Sam called over the howling wind. "We can wait it out there." They reached the small cabin just as hail began to fall, stinging their skin through their clothes. Inside, the shack was spare but dry, a single room with a small stove, a rough table with 2 chairs, and a narrow cot. Sam busied himself lighting the stove while Olivia removed her soaked outer garments. The domesticity of the scene, the two of them seeking shelter together, created an intimacy that made him acutely uncomfortable. "Should be warm soon," he said, more to fill the silence than anything else. "Thank you." She moved to stand beside the stove, extending her hands toward the growing warmth. Water dripped from her hair, which had come partially undone from its practical braid. In the dim light, with her guard lowered by cold and fatigue, she looked younger and more vulnerable than he'd seen her before. "Why are you really here, Miss Brennan?" The question came unbidden. "What are you running from in Boston?" She glanced at him, surprised, then gave a small, rueful smile. "What makes you think I'm running?" "People don't leave comfort for hardship without reason." Olivia was quiet for a long moment, watching the flames through the stove's iron grate. "My father died last year," she finally said. "He was all I had. My mother passed when I was small." "I'm sorry," Sam said, and meant it. "After the funeral," she continued, "I discovered that Boston society had very specific ideas about what a woman in my position should do. Marry preferably to someone who could manage my inheritance, become a proper widow devoted to charitable works, essentially disappear into a prescribed role." Her jaw tightened at the memory. "My father raised me to think for myself. He taught me about horses, about business. He never treated me as less capable because I was female." She looked up at Sam, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "I'm not running from anything, Mr. Blackett. I'm running towards something. A place where I can build a life on my own terms." The simple honesty of her statement resonated deeply with Sam, echoing his own journey west years ago. For the first time, he saw in Olivia not just an Easterner with unrealistic dreams, but a kindred spirit seeking the same freedom he had sought. "Samuel," he said quietly. "My name is Samuel." Her smile then was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "Olivia," she replied, extending her hand as she had that first day in Clearwater. This time when he took it, something shifted between them, a recognition, perhaps, or the first tentative bridge across the careful distance Sam maintained from everyone. They spent the hours of the storm in conversation that ranged from practical matters of ranching to deeper discussions of what had shaped them. Sam found himself speaking of his family lost in the war, words he'd never shared with another living soul pouring out in the safe confines of the storm-lashed cabin. "After they were gone," he admitted, "I couldn't bear the thought of building those connections again. Out here alone, I could convince myself I didn't need them." "And now?" Olivia asked softly. Sam looked at her, this woman who had somehow slipped past his defenses in just a few short days. "Now I'm not so sure." By the time the storm passed, leaving behind a washed-clean world of gleaming wet grass and rainbow-strewn skies, something had changed between them. The ride back to the ranch was filled with a comfortable silence punctuated by observations about the land they passed. No longer a tour guide and visitor, but two people sharing knowledge and perspective. When they arrived, however, reality intruded in the form of an agitated Hamilton pacing the ranch house porch. "Olivia, thank God!" he exclaimed as they rode up. "I was about to send out a search party." "We took shelter from the storm, Uncle," Olivia explained, dismounting. "Mr. Blackett knew of a line shack nearby." Hamilton's relief quickly gave way to concern about appearances. "Alone. The two of you," he lowered his voice, though not enough. "My dear, your reputation is my own concern," she finished firmly. "We sought shelter from a dangerous storm. There's nothing improper in that." Sam watched the exchange with a growing sense of unease. The easy connection they'd formed in the shack seemed suddenly fragile in the face of social conventions, conventions that, even on the frontier, could prove destructive. "Mr. Hamilton," he said, stepping forward. Your niece was never in any danger from the elements or otherwise. You have my word as a gentleman." Hamilton looked marginally appeased, though still troubled. Of course, of course. It's just that talk can be damaging, especially for a young woman hoping to establish herself in a new community. "Then we shall give them better things to talk about," Olivia declared, "such as my purchase of the McAllister property. I've decided to make an offer." The announcement caught Sam by surprise. The McAllister place was one of the properties they'd viewed, a promising piece of land with good water access and natural shelter for horses, but it bordered his own ranch to the east. They would be neighbors. "Olivia, are you certain?" Hamilton asked. "It's rather isolated." "It adjoins Mr. Blackett's ranch," she pointed out, "hardly isolated by frontier standards. And the price is fair for land of that quality." Hamilton looked between the two of them, a speculative gleam entering his eye. "Well, I suppose having an established rancher as a neighbor would be an advantage for a new settler." The implications in his tone weren't lost on Sam, who suddenly found himself wondering if Hamilton might be nurturing hopes of a different kind of connection between his niece and the rancher. The thought brought both alarm and a surprising flicker of something else, possibility. Over the next 2 weeks, as Olivia's purchase of the McAllister property proceeded, Sam found himself increasingly drawn into her plans. Almost against his will, he offered advice on improvements, suggested reliable contractors from town, and even helped select initial stock for her planned horse breeding operation. "You realize people are talking," Mike commented one evening as they returned from delivering lumber to Olivia's new property. "Half the town thinks you're courting Miss Brennan." "That's ridiculous," Sam replied automatically. "I'm just being neighborly." Mike's expression made it clear he wasn't convinced. "You rode 20 miles to Coopersville yesterday because she mentioned wanting a particular kind of stove that Whitacres didn't carry." Sam had no good response to that. The truth was, he found himself thinking of Olivia constantly. Her laugh, her determined approach to challenges, the way she saw through his gruff exterior to the man beneath. But years of holding people at a distance made the prospect of admitting these feelings terrifying. "She'll be gone once she realizes how hard frontier life really is," he said instead. Mike shook his head. "Keep telling yourself that, boss." The test of Olivia's resolve came sooner than expected. As she was overseeing the construction of her horse barn, 3 riders approached her property. Sam, who had come to help set fence posts, recognized them immediately. The Harker brothers, a trio of troublemakers who'd been pressuring smaller ranchers to sell out to their father's growing operation. "Well, look what we have here," Jade Harker, the eldest, called as they approached. "Little lady playing rancher." His gaze traveled over Olivia in a way that made Sam's jaw clench. McAllister was smart to sell. "This ain't land for a woman alone." Olivia straightened, brushing dust from her practical work clothes. "Mr. McAllister sold because he was returning to Pennsylvania for his daughter's health, and I'm hardly alone. I have 6 men working for me." "Hired hands," Jade sneered. "They'll be gone once winter sets in, and then what?" "My pa's offering fair prices for properties in this valley. Best take him up on it before things get difficult." Sam stepped forward, hand resting casually near his holstered revolver. "Miss Brennan isn't interested, Harker. Best move along." Jade's eyes narrowed. "This ain't your business, Blackett, unless you've got some personal interest in the lady's affairs." "Miss Brennan is my neighbor," Sam replied evenly. "That makes her welfare my concern." The middle Harker brother, Luke, spat a stream of tobacco juice. "Pa won't be happy about another holdout. 2 adjoining properties could cause problems for the drive route he's planning." "Your father doesn't own this valley," Olivia said, her voice calm but firm. "And threats won't convince me to sell." "Wasn't a threat, ma'am," Jade said with a cold smile. "Just friendly advice. Accidents happen out here all the time, fires, stampedes. Would be a shame if your investment went up in smoke before you even got started." Sam took another step forward, no longer casual. "That sounded a lot like a threat, Harker. One that could get you shot in these parts." For a tense moment, it seemed violence might erupt right there. Then Luke placed a restraining hand on his brother's arm. "Come on, Jade. Pa said to talk, not start trouble." With a final glare, Jade wheeled his horse. "Think about it, Miss Brennan. Pa's offer won't stay open forever." As they rode away, Sam turned to Olivia, expecting to find her shaken. Instead, her eyes were bright with anger and determination. "I won't be bullied off my land before I've even properly settled it," she declared. "The Harkers are dangerous," Sam warned. "Old Man Harker wants to control the whole valley. He's not above using intimidation to get what he wants." "All the more reason to stand firm," Olivia replied. "If everyone gives in to bullies, they never stop." Sam found himself torn between admiration for her courage and fear for her safety. "At least consider hiring some men for protection until your place is established." Olivia studied him for a moment, then nodded. "That seems sensible. Would you help me select reliable men?" "Of course," Sam agreed, relieved she was being practical. "And I'll increase patrols along our shared boundary." That evening, as they sat on the porch of her partially completed house, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple, Sam found himself contemplating how quickly Olivia had become important to him. The thought of her facing danger alone was unbearable. "You could go back to Boston," he said quietly. "No one would blame you considering the threats." Olivia turned to look at him, her profile outlined in the fading light. "Would you go back to Virginia if someone threatened your land?" "That's different." "Is it?" She shifted to face him fully. "Because I'm a woman, or because you don't believe I'm truly committed to this life?" Sam couldn't meet her eyes. "Because I couldn't bear it if something happened to you." The admission hung in the air between them, more revealing than he'd intended. Olivia reached out, her hand covering his where it rested on the porch railing. "Samuel," she said softly, "I appreciate your concern, but I didn't come west seeking safety. I came seeking a life of my own making with all its risks and rewards." Her fingers tightened on his. "And I've found something else I wasn't looking for." Sam looked up then, meeting her gaze. "What's that?" "Someone who sees me as I am, not as a wealthy orphan to be managed or a woman to be protected, but as a person with dreams worth fighting for." She smiled. "Even if that someone is frustratingly determined to convince me those dreams are impossible." He felt something inside him shift, like ice breaking up on a river in spring. "I'm starting to think nothing is impossible for you, Olivia Brennan." Before he could say more, before he could find the courage to express the feelings growing within him, the sound of approaching horses interrupted the moment. Sam was on his feet instantly, hand going to his weapon. "Stay here," he instructed, moving to the edge of the porch where he could see the approaching riders. To his relief, it was Mike Dooley and two of their ranch hands, but the urgency in their approach suggested trouble. "Boss," Mike called as they reined in. "We've got problems. Harkers drove 100 head across the north section, tore down half a mile of fence doing it." Sam cursed under his breath. "Damage?" "Mostly the fence, but they scattered some of our cattle in the process. Jenkins is rounding them up now." Mike glanced at Olivia, who had come to stand beside Sam despite his instructions. "Evening, Miss Brennan." "Sorry to interrupt." "Not at all," she replied. "It seems we share a problem with the Harkers." "They're testing boundaries," Sam said grimly, "seeing how far they can push before meeting resistance." He turned to Mike. "Double the night patrols and make sure every man is armed." "What about Miss Brennan's place?" Mike asked. "She's more vulnerable being new and—" "A woman," Olivia finished with a raised eyebrow. "Undermanned," Mike corrected diplomatically. Sam made a quick decision. "We'll set up a rotation. 2 men here at night until her bunkhouse is finished and she has her own crew in place." "I can pay for protection," Olivia offered. Sam shook his head. "Neighbors help neighbors out here. That's one frontier tradition worth keeping." As Mike and the others rode back to organize the patrols, Sam found himself reluctant to leave Olivia alone, even for the night. "I'll stay until your foreman arrives," he said. "Jenkins should be here within the hour." Olivia nodded and they moved back to the porch, a new tension between them. The easy moment from before had passed, replaced by the reality of the threat they faced. Yet somehow the shared danger had shifted something in their relationship, from tentative friendship to something deeper, a partnership forged in adversity. The Harkers' pressure escalated over the next week. A mysterious fire destroyed a half-built corral on Olivia's property. Shots were fired at one of Sam's night patrols, though no one was hit. Rumors spread in town that Old Man Harker was bringing in professional gunmen from Wyoming. Through it all, Olivia remained steadfast, continuing construction on her house and outbuildings as if the threats didn't exist. But Sam noticed she now wore a small derringer in a pocket of her work skirts, and she'd taken up his offer to practice with a rifle. "You're a natural shot," he commented one afternoon after she'd hit 5 bottles in succession at 50 yards. "My father believed women should be able to protect themselves," she explained, reloading with practiced ease. "He taught me to shoot when I was 14. Sam watched her, admiring the calm confidence with which she handled the weapon. "Your father sounds like an unusual man for Boston society." "He was," she agreed with a fond smile. "After my mother died, he ignored all the well-meaning advice about sending me to finishing school or hiring a succession of governesses. Instead, he included me in everything: his business, his love of horses, his reading. He used to say that the world would try to make me small, so he was determined to help me grow as large as possible." "He succeeded," Sam said softly. Olivia looked up, catching his gaze. Something passed between them, a recognition, a possibility. But before either could speak, the sound of galloping hooves brought them both to attention. It was one of Olivia's workers, his horse lathered from hard riding. "Miss Brennan, they've taken your foreman." "Jenkins, who's taken him?" Olivia demanded. "Harker's men." "Caught him in town, said they'd release him when you agreed to sell." The worker paused, hesitant. "There's more. They say they have papers proving your deed is invalid, that McAllister didn't have clear title to sell." Sam swore under his breath. It was a common tactic, creating confusion over land titles to force owners to sell cheaply rather than face lengthy court battles. "The deed is perfectly valid," Olivia said firmly. "I had my lawyer in Boston verify all documents before purchase." "Doesn't matter if they've bribed the county clerk to lose the records," Sam pointed out. "It could take months to straighten out, and meanwhile, they'll make it impossible for you to continue building." Olivia's expression hardened. "They want to play legal games? Fine. My uncle's law firm has connections in the territorial capital. 2 can play at that game." She turned to her worker. "Where are they holding Jenkins?" "Old line shack on Harker's South Range, according to what I heard." Sam shook his head. "You can't be thinking of trying to free him yourself." "Of course not," Olivia replied. "That would be foolhardy, but I can't leave him in their hands either. He's my employee, my responsibility." "Then we do this properly," Sam said. "I'll ride to town, talk to Sheriff Davis. This is kidnapping, plain and simple." Olivia nodded. "I'll come with you. If we present a united front, the sheriff will be less likely to dismiss the complaint." The ride to town was tense, both of them aware that the conflict with the Harkers had reached a dangerous turning point. What had begun as intimidation was now moving toward outright lawlessness. If the sheriff failed to act, their options would become limited and far more dangerous. Sheriff Davis was a decent man, but cautious, especially where the influential Harker family was concerned. He listened to their account with a troubled expression. "Kidnapping's a serious charge," he said slowly. "You're certain Jenkins didn't go with them willingly? Harker pays well. He might have bought your man's loyalty." "Jenkins has been with me since Boston," Olivia replied firmly. "He wouldn't betray me." The sheriff sighed. "Even so, I can't just ride onto Harker property and start searching buildings without more to go on than hearsay from a ranch hand." "So you'll do nothing?" Sam demanded. "I didn't say that," Davis replied. "I'll ride out to the Harker ranch, speak to the old man directly. If your foreman is there against his will, I'll know." It wasn't much, but it was all the official help they were likely to get. As they left the sheriff's office, Sam could see Olivia struggling to contain her frustration. "He won't find anything," she said once they were out of earshot. "Harker's too clever to keep Jenkins at the main house." "Probably not," Sam agreed. "But the sheriff's visit will serve notice that kidnapping won't be ignored, even by the Harkers. It might buy us time." "Time for what?" Sam hesitated, then made a decision. "Time for us to find Jenkins ourselves." Olivia looked at him sharply. "You know where the line shack is?" "I do. It's isolated, minimal chance of anyone passing by." "Good place to hold someone without attracting attention." He lowered his voice. "But we can't just charge in. Harker's men won't hesitate to shoot." "Then we need a plan," Olivia said with determination. And I know just who can help us. To Sam's surprise, she led him to the telegraph office, where she quickly composed a message to her uncle in Clearwater, where he was concluding some business before returning east. Uncle stop heiress holding JNKINS. Stop need legal intervention and physical assistance. Stop meet BLACKATT. Ranch tomorrow morning. Stop OLIVIA. Hamilton may have connections, but I doubt he has experience with this kind of situation, Sam pointed out as they left the telegraph office. Olivia smiled, a determined gleam in her eye. My uncle spent his youth as a Pinkerton detective before inheriting my grandfather's business. He knows more about handling criminals than most lawmen. This revelation added yet another layer to Sam's understanding of Olivia and her family. They were not simply wealthy Easterners playing at frontier life. They were people of substance and unexpected capabilities. That night, as they waited for Hamilton's arrival, Sam and Olivia finalized their plan at his ranch house. The proximity of their heads bent over maps of the area, the shared purpose that united them. It all created an intimacy that Sam found both unsettling and profoundly right. If Jenkins is at the South Line shack, we'll need to approach from the east, using this ridgeline for cover, he explained, tracing the route with his finger. Olivia nodded, her shoulder brushing his as she leaned closer to see. And if he's not there, then we fall back and reconsider, but it's our best laid. Sam straightened, suddenly aware of how close they were sitting. Olivia, you understand this is dangerous. If anything were to happen to you. The same could happen to you, she interrupted. This isn't about me being a woman, Samuel. It's about doing what's right for someone who depends on us. Her gaze was steady, challenging him to disagree. Sam found he couldn't. She was right. This was exactly what neighbors did on the frontier, man or woman. They stood together against threats. They protected their own. Just promise me you'll be careful, he said finally. I've lost too many people I care about. I couldn't bear to lose you too. The words emerged before he could censor them, revealing more of his heart than he'd intended. But instead of retreating from the admission, Olivia reached out, her hand finding his. You won't lose me, Samuel, she said softly. I'm stronger than you think. I know exactly how strong you are, he replied, his voice rough with emotion. That's what terrifies me. Before he could say more, before he could find the courage to put into words the feelings growing within him, a knock at the door announced Mike Dooley's arrival with news from their scouts. Confirmed, boss, Mike reported. Jenkins is at the South Line shack, 2 guards relieved every 12 hours. Next change should be around dawn. That's our window then, Sam decided. We move an hour before first light. The night passed in tense preparation. Hamilton arrived just after midnight, bringing with him not only legal documents proving the validity of Olivia's deed, but also 2 former Pinkerton colleagues who happened to be in Montana on another matter. Convenient timing, the older man said with a wink to his niece. Almost as if someone knew trouble was brewing and asked me to bring reinforcements. Olivia smiled. I may have mentioned the Harkers' pressure in my letters. Hamilton turned serious. These land-grabbing operations follow the same pattern everywhere, my dear. First intimidation, then legal maneuvering, and finally violence if those fail. I wasn't about to leave you without backup. As dawn approached, their small force gathered at the ranch. Sam, Mike, 2 of Sam's most trusted hands, Hamilton and his 2 Pinkerton friends. Olivia, dressed in practical riding clothes with her hair braided tightly under a hat, checked the load in her derringer one final time. You're sure about this? Sam asked quietly as the others mounted up. Completely, she replied without hesitation. Jenkins came west because I asked him to. I won't abandon him now. The ride to the line shack was conducted in silence, each person aware of the risks they were taking. The eastern sky was just beginning to lighten as they reached the ridge overlooking their target. A small cabin nestled in a stand of pines, smoke rising from its chimney. As expected, 2 guards, Hamilton murmured, lowering his field glasses. One inside, one patrolling the perimeter. They separated according to plan. Hamilton and one of his men would approach from the north, creating a diversion. Sam, Mike, and the others would use that opportunity to overcome the outside guard and breach the cabin. Olivia, despite Sam's protests, had insisted on being part of the main group. Jenkins trusts me, she'd argued. He needs to see a familiar face, not just armed men. The plan worked almost perfectly. Hamilton's diversion, a series of gunshots and shouts that suggested a much larger force, drew the attention of both guards. The one outside moved toward the noise, allowing Mike to subdue him with a swift blow to the head. The inside guard, momentarily distracted by the commotion, was a fraction too slow to react when Sam kicked in the door. Jenkins was there, bound to a chair, his face bruised but his eyes alert. The moment he saw Olivia, relief washed over his features. "Miss Brennan, thank God." The guard recovered quickly, raising his weapon, but Sam was faster. A single shot disarmed the man, the bullet grazing his hand and sending his revolver clattering to the floor. "Next one won't miss," Sam promised, his voice cold. "On your knees, hands behind your head." As Mike secured the guard, Olivia rushed to free Jenkins. "Are you badly hurt?" she asked, cutting through his bonds. "Nothing that won't heal, miss," the foreman replied gruffly. "But I heard them talking. This isn't just about your land. The Harkers have a buyer from back east, some mining company. They think there's copper on both your property and Blackett's." Sam and Olivia exchanged a glance. This changed everything. It wasn't just about control of the valley, it was about what lay beneath it. "That explains their urgency," Hamilton said as he entered the cabin. "And it means the pressure will only increase. Mining interests have deep pockets and few scruples." They were preparing to leave, Jenkins supported between Sam and Mike, when the sound of approaching horses froze them in place. Through the cabin window, Sam counted at least 8 riders, Harker and his sons among them. "We're outnumbered," he said grimly. "But we have surprise," Hamilton countered. "They don't know we're armed and ready." "And we have this," Olivia added, pulling folded papers from her jacket pocket. "Telegrams from the territorial governor and land office confirming my deed's validity and expressing concern about reports of intimidation. Uncle's connections proved useful." Sam had to admire her thoroughness. Even in crisis, Olivia Brennan thought of every angle. "Let me handle this," Hamilton said, straightening his coat. "Negotiation was my specialty at Pinkerton." Before anyone could object, he stepped outside, hands raised to show he was unarmed. Sam positioned himself at the doorway, rifle ready, as Olivia and the others covered the windows. "Mr. Harker," Hamilton called, his voice carrying in the morning air. "Robert Hamilton, attorney. I believe we need to discuss your men's unfortunate decision to abduct Miss Brennan's employee." Old man Harker, a bull-necked man with a shock of white hair, reined in his horse. "This is private business, stranger. Best ride on." "I'm afraid I can't do that," Hamilton replied pleasantly. "You see, I have here communications from Governor Potts and the Territorial Land Office." He held up Olivia's papers. "They take a dim view of land fraud and kidnapping. The governor was particularly interested in reports of Eastern mining interests operating through local proxies to acquire land through intimidation." A flicker of uncertainty crossed Harker's face. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Hamilton's smile was razor-sharp. "The territorial marshal is already on his way from Helena. The question is, will he find a resolved situation or an ongoing criminal enterprise when he arrives?" Inside the cabin, Sam felt Olivia move to his side. "Is it working?" she whispered. "Maybe," he murmured back. "Harker's a bully, but he's not stupid if he thinks the governor is involved." Outside, the standoff continued. Jade Harker pushed his horse forward. "Pa, we can take them. They're bluffing." "Quiet," the old man snapped. To Hamilton, he said, "What exactly are you proposing?" "Simple," Hamilton replied. "You acknowledge Miss Brennan's legal right to her property. You compensate Mr. Jenkins for his injuries and distress, and you cease all attempts to pressure either Miss Brennan or Mr. Blackett to sell. And in return, no criminal charges, no territorial investigation into your mining connections. You walk away clean if somewhat disappointed." Hamilton shrugged. "Business is business, after all. Some deals simply don't work out." The negotiation continued for several tense minutes. Finally, Harker gave a curt nod. "Jenkins gets 500 for his trouble. But I want something in writing saying there'll be no charges." "Agreed," Hamilton said. "We'll draw up the papers in town with the sheriff as witness." As the Harkers turned to leave, Jade looked back at the cabin with naked hatred. "This isn't over," he called. "Accidents still happen out here." Indeed they do, Hamilton replied pleasantly. And men who make threats in front of witnesses often experience the most unfortunate accidents of all. The ride back to town was triumphant, though tempered by concern for Jenkins' injuries and awareness that the conflict, while de-escalated, wasn't truly resolved. The Harkers will honor the agreement for now, Hamilton explained as they gathered at the sheriff's office to formalize the terms. Old Man Harker has too much to lose if the governor starts asking questions. But they'll be looking for legal ways to achieve their goals now. Let them look, Olivia said firmly. My deed is solid and I have no intention of selling. Nor do I, Sam added, and if there is copper on our land, we'll deal with that ourselves on our terms. The ease with which he included himself in Olivia's plans didn't escape him, or her. A slight smile touched her lips as their eyes met in silent understanding. That evening, after Jenkins was settled with the doctor and the agreements were signed, Sam and Olivia found themselves alone on the porch of her newly completed house. The day's events had drawn them even closer, cementing a partnership that had been growing since their first meeting. You were magnificent today, Sam said softly. I've never known anyone like you, Olivia Brennan. She smiled, the moonlight casting her features in silver and shadow. Even though I'm an Easterner. Especially because you're an Easterner who proved every one of my assumptions wrong. He took her hand, his heart pounding with a different kind of courage than he'd needed that morning. When I first saw you step off that stagecoach, I thought you were just passing through, another tenderfoot who'd never last on the frontier. And now, her voice was barely above a whisper. Now I can't imagine this place without you, he admitted. You've become as essential to me as the mountains and the sky. Olivia moved closer, her hand coming to rest against his chest. When you pulled me from that stream and laughed that I was too heavy for you, I thought you were just another man who underestimated what a woman could be. I did underestimate you, Sam acknowledged. But I was also afraid of caring for someone who might leave, afraid of building something that could be lost. And now, she echoed his own question back to him. Now I'm more afraid of never knowing what we could build together. He cupped her face gently. I love you, Olivia, your strength, your determination, your heart. If you'll have me, I want to join our ranches and our lives. Tears sparkled in her eyes, catching the moonlight. I came west seeking independence, not knowing I would find a partner worthy of sharing it with. She smiled up at him. I love you too, Samuel Blackett, and yes, 1,000 times yes. Their lips met in a kiss that felt like coming home after a long journey, tender and passionate, the culmination of a path that had been leading them to each other since that first day in Clearwater. 1 year later, the Blackett Brennan Ranch hosted a celebration unlike any the valley had seen. Under an archway of wild roses and mountain laurel, Samuel and Olivia exchanged vows, their union blessing the merger of their lands and lives. The Harkers had eventually sold their holdings and moved on, their mining prospects having proved less valuable than anticipated. In their place, new settlers had arrived, drawn by the stability and fairness of the community Sam and Olivia were helping to build. After the ceremony, as guests danced and celebrated under lantern light, the newlyweds stole a moment alone by the stream where they had first truly seen each other. Did you ever imagine this? Olivia asked, her wedding dress gleaming in the twilight, when you pulled me from the water and laughed that I was too heavy. Sam smiled, drawing her close. Never. I thought I needed to carry everything alone, my past, my future, my burdens. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. What I've learned is that the strongest love isn't about carrying or being carried. It's about standing side by side, facing whatever comes together. Olivia's eyes sparkled as she looked up at him. Even a stubborn cowboy can learn new truths, it seems. Especially when taught by an even more stubborn woman, he agreed with a laugh. Hand in hand, they walked back toward the lights and music of their celebration. Two people who had found in each other not just love, but a partnership as vast and promising as the Montana sky above them. In the years that followed, their ranch prospered, becoming one of the most successful operations in the territory. They raised horses and cattle, and eventually children who grew up knowing both their father's quiet strength and their mother's determined spirit. And when visitors remarked on the unusual partnership that ran the Blackett Brennan Ranch, the decisions made together, the respect evident between husband and wife, Samuel would often smile and say, "She showed me strength in love, and it changed everything."